How's it
So
going?
it is going well. I am feeling nice and refreshed. I got more than enough sleep last night. I slept for like 11 hours, which is crazy. Never gets to happen ever. So I'm feeling really good. How are you?
I'm doing really good today. I'm hyper today, but other than that, I'm good. I'm trying to really relax. This week has been crazy, wild, busy,
Hmm.
and just not the norm. So I didn't even realize like it's Saturday until I kind of just opened my eyes. And then I was like, it's Sunday, and then it would be Monday. Where did this week go? But I'm doing good.
No,
Doing good.
that that I feel the same way. Like I feel like this week has been a blur. I remember Monday, and then it was Friday, and I was like,
Mm,
oh, okay, well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, honestly.
yes. So, everybody, we are so happy to be back. We took a break for the Thanksgiving holiday, and now we're ready to get back into things. Talk about the Queen of Swords today. But real quick, I do want to announce an exciting update. The Empress Journey now has its own YouTube page. Please go subscribe to it. And our podcast will be streamed on there now. We'll still stream it in the Facebook group for a while. It'll still be streamed on Mambo Soleil's YouTube. But if you guys could please also show us some love over there, that would be great.
Yes, yes, yes,
So,
yes.
um, any new developments or things that you want to talk about from our break? How was Thanksgiving or how that week was?
Man, I mean, I was just really happy to, get a break for a little bit. When we talk about the Empress in general, there's that whole aspect of taking the time to nurture yourself. And that was really something that I needed, especially like during the holiday season, because sometimes, dealing in, at least for me, a lot of social interaction and a lot of family can be a lot sometimes. And so having a balance of family interaction and also taking time for myself was like really, really good for me. Because I was really intentional about this year in terms of setting boundaries where I'm like, okay, I'm happy to see y'all. I love y'all. But once my social battery is out, I'm out for real this time. I'm sorry. Like, I love you all very much, but I'm gonna take some time for me. And so, yeah, I'm really happy that I did it that way this year. How about you?
Yes.
Anything of note?
I love that for you though. I think for me, I really did the same thing. I don't know what it was, but like the first few weeks of November were just a lot. It was very heavy and a lot of things were going on. And so just being able to relax, hide under my blanket for a little bit, then go spend a day with family and come back, I felt refreshed. I
Yes.
felt like just I had more energy and I was ready to go. So
Mhm.
I also have been starting playing around with prayer beads
Mhm.
and learning how to pray regularly and more intentionally versus it just being something that I do in my spiritual regimen. So that has
Mhm.
really, really just kind of helped in terms of grounding and being ready. So it's been a good time.
That's awesome.
Yes. So, as we've talked about in the past, in terms of the Emperor's journey, we are going to be discussing the queens and how the queens teach us lessons that aid us on this journey of becoming the Empress. So today, um, we are going to discuss the Queen of Swords, just, you know, partly because it's winter time. Queen of Swords fits in winter season, and she just feels right as the queen to start with. So I did go over this briefly before, but the Queen of Swords is a card of clarity and intellect and discernment. She represents archetype of someone who balances the mind and emotions to make wise and impartial decisions. Um, so when the Queen of Swords is upright, she has the clarity of thought, independence, boundaries, wisdom through experience, honesty, and directness. When she shows up reversed in a tarot spread, it can talk about things like being overly critical, especially in terms of like just the harshness and how you're saying things with your mouth. Any type of emotional suppression. One of the things that really helped me and when I was learning tarot is how Mambo Soleil would talk about how the Queen of Swords is someone who has been through a lot. And in her debilitated state, she can be embittered. And so she may hide or suppress her emotions, and she may focus only on things that are logical, um, at the expense of her own heart. And so she deals with isolation, and having clouded judgment. She can also be manipulative in that state. So, um, Lavana, do you have any, in your experience in reading tarot, do you have any other kind of definitions or um, keywords or anything that would lend to the Queen of Swords?
Um, yes. So I don't know if you remember. So a few episodes we kind of just talked about like different queens and the queens that really resonated for us, especially like throughout our journeys. And I love the Queen of Swords. She's my girl. Like I think that in terms of queens, she's the area where I typically lean towards the most and shine to. So yes, I shine to connect to. Um, and so, in terms of the queen, she's incredibly perceptive about things. She's self reliant. In terms of like the Jungian psychology behind her, she's known as having that balance of feeling, so with emotional feeling, but also thinking. And so, her struggle or like what she really has to work through is like balancing her emotions with logic. And so, like, having that emotional intelligence, but also approaching things with her mind. And so, like you said, like, if she is debilitated or that reverse meaning, she's going to cut out the emotional aspect altogether. And, like you said, like, that's more about self preservation because for her, because she's so logical, it takes a lot to even tap into that emotional side and have that vulnerability. And so in situations where she feels like she's really vulnerable and she doesn't get the results that she wants to, then she's just going to be like, okay, forget it. That was a mistake, or we are no longer doing anything related to our emotions right now. We're just going to be cold and like yeah, like judgmental and play mind games, and who needs emotions? um what is that? It's like um that Tina Turner song, like what's love got to do with it, where it's just like, you know what, forget it. Like who
Yeah.
needs a heart when a heart can be broken? It's like it's that kind of thing where it's just like yeah, I'm done, I've had enough, like we're just gonna lock in, and I can do it on my own. I'm just gonna think through some things. But so yeah, she has this balance of book smarts and diplomacy and with the emotional intelligence. And so, a lot of times her archetype then shows up as a teacher, which is something that resonates with me in terms of like just my journey and how I've been showing up as a priestess. I really enjoy challenging people in to changing their thoughts about certain things and expanding their mindsets. And so that's an aspect of the Queen of Swords, and yeah, I think yes, she's a communicator, diplomat, self-reliant, all that, and
Mhm.
she's about business as well. She, even though Queen of Pentacles can be said to be a businesswoman, that strategy mindset behind operating business is also Queen of Swords.
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. And so you covered like some of those lessons that you have learned from the Queen of Swords. I think like the balance between the heart and the mind is a really big one, because
Mhm.
she teaches us that um, while intellect is a powerful tool, it also has to be tempered with the emotional understanding. Um, it can sometimes you can like if you're too logical, you can come off as just being like out of touch with everyone, just very cold and almost cruel and direct and to the point. But it kind of reminds me of like my master's degree is in psychology and it's in applied behavior analysis was my specialty. And so when you're working with children who have intellectual disabilities like autism, and you're applying techniques of ABA, it was you can't think of any type of um, function of life that is not observable, right? So if the
Mhm.
child is like quote unquote tired, what are the symptoms of tired that we can actually see? But like, everybody expresses how they're tired differently, or if they're
Mhm.
sick or whatever, you're going to express it differently. So it completely eliminates any type of emotional, any type of mental type of function that you can't see. And so when I was working with a 16-year-old, I mean, 16 was a hard year for me personally, but for
Mhm.
any teenager, that is really hard. So, like, having a 16-year-old going through 16-year-old things, but also dealing with being nonverbal and
Mhm.
being, having autism, like, it was really hard to motivate her. And motivation is a really big component of ABA. And this is when I started to be like, okay, yes, observable behaviors do help us understand um, the function of people or why they do what they do, but the emotional component also matters and it plays a role in that. And so I was like, I can't do this anymore because I was causing more harm to her just showing up than just trying than what I was doing and helping. Like it stressed her out to the point like some of her behaviors were biting and pulling her hair and um I was like it there has to come to a point where as BCBAs or as ABA professionals where we have to understand that humans are not robots and children with special needs are not robots and we cannot just continue to try to shape them and what we think quote unquote society should look like or how you should behave and how you should act because everybody's going to be thrown off on their emotions at one point. And so that was a long way to explain how the queen teaches us about how we still need that mental emotional balance, but I hope it helped.
No, that does help, and I have a couple points on that. Just one from just the psychological aspect where, we're talking about this in terms of, just being a person in their spiritual journey, but, even in terms of, like you said, psychology, where that particular method is rooted in behavioralism, which is one of like the earlier theories in psychology. But, as it's evolved, we now, or a lot of practitioners have a more holistic understanding of psychology and how to treat and help people. And yes, you need the emotional component and support as well. And it's not just all like behaviors and techniques and you have to do this. It's definitely all like more integrated now. And I think again that is a testament to more like yes, you need that um like intellectual approach to things, and you do like and there are some aspects that are going to be more technical, but you still at the end of the day have to consider the human emotion side of things. And then also one other thing that I thought about that's like in the everyday like real world example of having that balance. So I come from more of like a techie background and have had a lot of experience in tech companies. And there's one in particular where in the tech world we have a lot of smart people, but they don't always have the highest emotional intelligence. And so it got to the point where this one company I was had this model that was like no smart assholes. Whereas like, okay, like we get it. Everybody is smart, but you still have to treat people with compassion and respect and empathy. And so like even in the professional world, it matters how you show up, and having that balance that the Queen of Swords has in terms of emotional intelligence versus like logic and book smarts is also super important in other aspects of your life.
Right. Very, very true. And then speaking on emotions, the Queen of Swords also helps us with healing through truth, right? We talked about how she can be one who suppresses a lot of her emotions. The Queen of Swords in tarot is the queen who has dealt with divorce or a lot of heartbreak or um, loss in some way. And so there's a lot of truths that the queen of that are needing to be faced, and those truths can be really painful, but they are very necessary for our growth. And so when we think about how does the Queen of Swords help in terms of getting us to the point of being the Empress, um, we need to confront and deal with those emotional pains that we are suppressing, our traumas, our history, just all of those things that we as people just kind of want to ignore and put away. I would say even the times in our lives in which we felt embarrassed, like for me, or where you feel shame. And so
Mhm.
for me, it's like when thoughts come back to me and I remember something embarrassing, like I'll tell myself to shut up or I'll tell myself to stop and like
Mhm.
why, just very sudden and out of the blue. And then I'm
Mhm.
like, wait, okay, I was embarrassed. Like I have to name what it is and what I'm trying to push away because I've noticed that for myself, I can't be the person who I'm meant to be if I am just not confronting situations that make me feel embarrassed or shameful, because that makes me
Mhm.
afraid to put myself out there. And
Mhm.
without at first, I was like, why am I afraid to put myself out there? What am I afraid of? And it was really hard for me to kind of conceptualize, why am I shy? Why am I, holding back without understanding, oh, there were situations in my life that made me feel ashamed, embarrassed, made me feel these heavy emotions that I completely just tried to ignore or suppress. And so
Mhm.
the Queen of Swords really helps us with learning how to heal from those situations, but heal with the truth and understanding of those situations so that we can continue to move forward in who we're called to be.
Yes, yes, yes. And this is another reason why she's my girl. So I am one of those people who are just really deep into shadow work. I loved, well, I mean, nobody loves shadow work because it's not always fun, but I love like the end result of shadow work, and I love supporting people in their shadow work. And with the Queen of Swords, it's part of it where she has to sit down and be very introspective and really think about like what just happened, Why did it happen? What can I learn from it? And how do I apply it? And also, in terms of like resilience, I talked about her being resilient before. And I want to be very clear that there's this line with resilience where you shouldn't be resilient to the point where when I'm talking about resilience, it's not in the terms of like, okay, all of these life things are happening. I just have to keep going, 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 going. In this particular application of resilience, it's about being resilient enough to face what you need to face and having the courage to look at these emotional things. And it's tough sometimes to kind of, because like you have that emotional aspect where like, okay, you have to sit down and like look at your like work through your grief, and that is a hard experience. And so that's when the resiliency piece comes in, and the commitment to holding yourself accountable and sitting in your own truth, and be having that strength and that courage and resilience to go through that process is where the resiliency is going to be key when we talk about the Queen of Swords.
I love that you mentioned that definition of resiliency because it's almost as if when we talk about being resilient, it's almost like nothing's going to break you. Nothing's going to be too hard to deal with. You can do it. You can just push through, push harder. Almost like you're working out, like, right? If the weights are too heavy, you're like, do it, push through it, right?
Yes.
And you never allow yourself the time to grieve, to rest, to take a moment to just be like, this is hard, and acknowledge what you're going through. And so that's another form of suppression, is just
Hmm.
trying to pushing through. I wrote a blog about how I no longer praise my resiliency because I realized in doing that, I also did not give myself enough grace for the times I couldn't make it,
Hmm.
for the times I couldn't push through. I was very, very hard on myself. And it would almost be like a spiral effect of how much I would just, it's like, oh, dang it, I can't push through this moment. So let me just give up, or beat on myself so much emotionally, mentally, on why I can't. And then it leads into I'm not good enough. I won't ever be able to do anything. And you see, like, that just kind of takes you down further versus the understanding that actually being resilient is a bigger concept than what we've made it out to be today.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, I love that blog. I love the concept of no longer praising resiliency, which is really interesting because, one of I'll say like my trades, one of my aspects is actually like resiliency coaching, and that's why I like to present it in a way that's not like, hey, we're not pushing yourself beyond breaking point. That's not really how we want to uphold resilience. And it's really interesting what you said in terms of the aspect of beating yourself up when you in times where you weren't able to, push through or kind of play through. It almost even extends itself in pairs really it can be in a really ugly way, pairing with perfectionism, which is another debilitation of the Queen of Swords. So actually both of those things together, when you're considering resilience, just kind of like pushing yourself beyond the breaking point, and then also you have that perfection aspect, and they kind of play on each other where like it's like I have to push, push, push because I have to be this type of person and it has to be perfect and it has to go this way. And then if it doesn't, that's when I'm going to start beating myself up and having that negative self-talk, which is another debilitation of the Queen of Swords in particular. She's very, very good with her words, but if it's debilitated and it's nasty, that means that she can also say really ugly things to herself as well. And so that's again why it's so important to have that balance where you're taking into account having grace for yourself, I think is how you put it, which is amazing. And again, that comes from having that emotional empathy towards yourself and that compassion towards yourself that the Queen of Swords really has to balance as well.
Yes, very true. And so, speaking on things that are often misunderstood, the Queen of Swords is also independent and self sufficient. And I grew up in the era of we need an independent woman, right? Like you had the INDEP, you know, and I love her because she got her own. You know, all of that. I grew up in high school at that point. So I'm thinking I have, in order for me to be a woman who attracts a certain type of man, I have to be this self sufficient, this independent woman who doesn't need a man but wants one, right? And that can be its own danger in and of itself. So, like, the Queen of Swords teaches us that um, we do need to find strength within ourselves without relying on external validation, right? So
Mm,
it's not that I can do it all by myself and shun everybody and not allow people to help you. It's I don't need the outward praise. I don't need to people please. I don't need, you know, all of this for me to do it. And so she helps us with our understanding of what being self-sufficient is.
yes, yes, yes. I love that. And just to add on a little bit to that in terms of, being self-sufficient. It's, having that understanding in the psychological, I think, term for it is your locus of control. So either like your outside environment, it's sorry, let me try one more time. Either it's internal where like you really own that ownership of your life and you recognize that you have the autonomy to make change and you're independent in that way without having to rely on other people or like stuff just happens to you. And so having that Queen of Swords mentality where like yes, I can have control and I can do things for myself and I don't necessarily need external validation and I don't really need like I if it comes down to it, I can do it for myself is really what it is versus like you not getting caught up in like, okay, I need a man to do this, I need a man to do that. So it's again, there's that balance there where it's not like totally, I don't need anybody or anything. I can do it myself. It's more so the opposite where it's just like, um, I'm not helpless. Like I can do it myself if I need to, but I understand that it's great to have collaboration, even if it's not like, romantic partnership, but it's great to have other people and know that I have other people in my corner. And in terms of Queen of Swords, and when she's very goal oriented, and so she's going to do the best possible thing to achieve her goals. And she understands that that means incorporating other people, that means collaborating. It means taking advantage of the concept of synergy, which is like 1 and 1 equals 3. And so it's independent. Like I can do this by myself. I can step up. I can be a leader, but it's not like it's not required to be that way. It's not like you should be able to like accept the help from other people. Yeah.
Yes, very true. And she also is accountable and she takes accountability. So, like, her clarity
Yes.
and her decisiveness highlights the importance of owning our own choices and our own actions and not being so, uh, what's the word? I don't know where I was going. Sorry about that. But like, you know, she holds herself accountable for the
Mhm.
choices she makes and the decisions she makes when she's in her upright position. And that's what helps us in continuing on with this journey.
Yeah, and that even goes back into being able to sit with uncomfortable truths because it's easy to take credit for all the things that you did right, but it's harder to own up to certain like mistakes that you might have made. And it's easier to yeah, so it's easier when things are going well, but like in terms of taking accountability for your life, you're like, yeah, I did that. Okay, well, what happens when things aren't going so well? Like, are you also going to take for the responsibility for the things that you did or didn't do to end up in certain situations? And so I think that's another aspect to consider.
Yes. not being so upset and so bitter that you don't see where when you are getting in your own way. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are times when you meet people and everything they say is negative and it's everybody's fault but their own. And when you sit there and you ask them, well, okay, how do we make this better? Or what can you do so that, because you can't control everybody else, right? Like, so what
Mm-hmm.
can you do to make the situation better for yourself at this moment in time? And if you're so busy thinking about how you didn't get a promotion because um, so and so your higher up doesn't like you, or they don't like black women, or they don't like black people, or the man is holding you
Mm-hmm.
down, then you can't then how does that help you? Because all you're
Mm-hmm.
doing is just sitting there whining and complaining, and you're not furthering yourself. Does that mean that, oh, maybe at this point I've stayed in this job too long? If I've noticed these red flags from these people, do I need to go to a different company, to a better environment? How do I put myself in position to have a better outcome for myself? And so leaning off of that, she also um, helps with setting boundaries. She reminds us that saying no can be the act of self love and empowerment. And um, it's the swords, right? The swords are about also, I mean, they're tied to the air element, so they are about our thoughts, but also how we speak. And saying no is a very important thing. Like I talked about a little bit earlier about the people pleasing and trying to seek a lot of external validation. We also need to set boundaries um, for our own development, our own personal self care. I think all of the queens help us with setting boundaries in a different way, but she specifically can help us with saying no and standing firm in our no, understanding that no is a complete sentence. And that was one of the things. And at times it still can be a struggle for me. Is like I
Mm-hmm.
need to say no, but I don't, how do I explain why I'm saying no? Or what's a way to say no that's not going to make the other person upset? Like, you don't have to do
Mm-hmm.
that. No, that no other explanation or requirement is necessary in certain situations.
Yes, you're so right. Like, I don't want to hurt the other people's, like, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or like, what if they think XYZ? It's like, no, that's when the Queen of Swords. So that's the part where, like, she's really good about detaching the emotional value, like the emotion surrounded in that. Like, that's when it's good to be like, no, like, like you have to protect yourself. We're gonna chop this off. Um, and also, she's really good about clearly, like you said, when saying no, but clearly articulating her boundaries is really important. Because I know, especially more of like the people pleaser, like when you're first starting off with boundary setting in general, and you're figuring out like what your boundaries even are. She's really good with helping you think through about like what those need to exactly to be, and how to communicate them to people effectively as well. And that's really important in order to maintain your boundaries.
Yes. So the Queen of Swords represents an important step to the path to embodying the Empress, learning discernment and wisdom. And so, like, she we talked about how she embodies like the intellectual clarity, and so the Empress channels intuition and emotional depth. And so, like, from what we're learning from the Queen of Swords and being the Empress, we can highlight the importance of integrating our heart and our mind, like we talked about. And what does it mean to be interdependent, healing from past wounds, and then empowering through creation. Like the Empress is a very creative person, or the archetype of being creative. And um, uh, so the Queen of Swords kind of shows us how to use our intellect um, and mastery through like clear communication, which kind of helps us be more creative and more nurturing. I think it's always good to take what you know to be um, intellectually sound and combine it with the creativity, especially when doing spell work. That's one of the things as a craftsman, and when I'm making spiritual tools, that I really lean into. So like for example, creating daggers for people, right? You understand that daggers are protective, that they can cut away things, they're sharp, all of these things. But then turning that symbolism into an actual tool that you can use to protect yourself spiritually, to help you with cutting ties or cutting away energy, right? That also takes a certain level of creativity. So when you're considering crafting spells or doing workings, you want to take, yes, your book smart knowledge of magic theory, but also allow yourself to expand on what does that look like for you? How does that fit you? And so like we talked about how like all spell work and all like these recipes of spells isn't always good for you, because it's every situation is not like a cookie cutter situation. And so the Queen of Swords teaches us how to not only take our book smarts, our be so heavy in the books of what um, being a witch is, or being a priestess is, or the practices of African traditional religions, but also leaning into spirit, using our intuition, and shaping that um, spell work or that working for us as an individual priestess in ways that can actually be effective for us.
You said a lot. You said a really let me try one more time. You said a lot of really good things. And just to kind of, add on to that a little bit, the Queen of Swords and the aspect and how she shows up in the Empress is, you know, the Empress learns a lot. She has a lot of lessons through each of the queens, right? And where I at least my take on it, and where the aspect of the Queen of Swords really shines, is that she's able to synthesize that information. And it's like, okay, like I have all of these lessons, I have all of these tools in my bag now. Like, what is going to be the best tool to use at this time, and how do I use this, and like in what situations would I do XYZ? And so it's like it's discernment, right? And I think you even, highlighted that as an aspect of like how the Queen of Swords really really shapes and molds and shows up in the Empress in terms of discernment, and not even just in crafting, which I'm going to go back to in a second, but like, and what she says and how she moves, just having that general discernment is definitely an aspect of that she learned through the Queen of Swords. Yes, and then in terms of crafting, it's super important because I mean, like even me personally, I love the strategy. I do love the theory and the strategy of crafting and magic, and it's super important because like the more you're intentional about things, the stronger objects or the stronger spells that you can personally craft. And just having that, again, that intellectual background is going to help you. But then, like you said, in terms of like allowing yourself to expand upon that and, be creative and bounce around, you can't really, yes, you can do it if you don't have that foundation, just going to feel a little bit more chaotic. But having that foundation and understanding like when it's time to switch wait, that creative mode on and lean into it is going to be a lot easier when you do kind of have a clear understanding of your goal and how you want to get there. Or even sometimes I like to work backwards where I'm like, okay, this is what I want to achieve. All right, let's work. And like, this is what I really, really want to do. And like, how do I work backwards? And like, how do I achieve this? And like, what are all the little ways I can do it? And like, what are some new ways I've never even thought of before? And so, yes, because the a lot of creativity does come from passion and the heart, but like there's mental elasticity and that goes into the creative aspect as well. It's really like when you're thinking through a lot of things, I'll say, and there's a lot of thoughts. So when we think of the swords and the Ace of Swords relating more to like new like thoughts and new ideas, and new ways to like communicate. That's that creativity aspect where it's like the newness in like taking what you know and be able to create something new, like taking all the known and being able to create something new and unknown from it. And I think yes, you're right. That's where the Queen of Swords really shines within the Empress.
Yes, I love that. And then one thing that came up too is even in the lessons of the Page of Swords, right? Like we don't know it all.
Hmm.
And I think when you understand that the healing and truth aspect, that also applies to allowing ourselves to not be perfect, allowing ourselves to make mistakes, allowing ourselves to learn from the mistakes we make. And
Hmm.
so, and when that goes into doing spell work and crafting, I think that a lot of times when you're on social media, people are like, oh, you're not a good witch, or you're not a good practitioner or a good priestess because that did not work. That thing did not work, and not everything is going to work, but you can learn, okay, why didn't this work for me specifically, and go keep moving and rework it and to see how it comes out. um, I think is very important on your journey of becoming a practitioner, or just being a practitioner in general, is understanding that not every your power is not based on totally on if your actual spell or your working actually works, right? Or the ritual actually works. It's on your ability to work with spirit and understand why. And this is why we add so many steps of divination, and why we're like, okay, what is my outcome going to be, right? Like we ask all these different questions because there's like, if it's not going to work, spirit may tell you initially, and then you can go back and rework it. It's just allowing yourself to be amendable and agreeable and flexible. That's the word. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, flexible. I agree. Um it's knowing how and when to troubleshoot things. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a lot, especially in the beginning of your journey, where if something doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to, or like something feels like it's off and you're stuck and it's just like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so, having it's that discernment comes from, learning from experience and, giving yourself grace again, where it's just like everything is not going to be perfect all the time. And it's about, or even like there are certain situations, not even if anything goes wrong, but like, Christ, like stuff happens. And so there's almost it almost leans into like crisis management as well, where um you cannot like there are gonna be times where you want to just freeze up and you can't. You really have to like think your way through it and be more strategic in that moment. And that's where, again, the Queen of Swords is able to pull from the experiences and kind of push through where more the more emotional side might want to have like a meltdown and give up in a moment that's very critical, whether that is like, okay, something's going sideways in my spell, I need to fix it now, like how do I do that? I need to think through this and not just stand there and be like, oh no, what's happening, where there's something that's happening in your life that, like, if you just sat down and think about it, you know that there is a plan of action that you can do. And I think, again, that's where that balance of what the Queen of Swords brings into, where it's like, okay, yes, there's a time to sit and experience your emotions, but there's a time when, like, you really have to go and you really have to think through, what am I going to do, and put a plan in action, and and troubleshoot, do divinations, XYZ, whatever it is. Like, you really, really, really have to have that discernment to say, like, okay, we got to go, we got to make a plan. Let's just to do the thing, which I think we'll even talk about in Queen of Wands in terms of taking action. So yes, the idea of being flexible and light on your feet can be an aspect that is learned through the Queen of Swords.
And speaking on the Queen of Wands for a second, like you always think about how, I mean, and it is, but that's the queen who really helps you with embodying who you are and being able to step out and, put your, do what the action that you need to do. But also the Queen of Swords, she also helps in that in a way, in that she helps you own your voice. So like if we think of it in terms of like our throat chakra versus our solar plexus chakra, our throat chakra still helps us with the understanding of who we are and being able um to embrace who we are, and then also in our communication styles still being, like you said earlier, really compassionate but also um stern at the same time, like that balance of not being too overly aggressive but also leaning into some sort of compassion. So whether that be compassion towards ourselves or compassion for other people, I think in terms of acknowledging who I am as a priestess, that is still a lesson that I'm learning, is where um I didn't speak up enough for myself, or I didn't advocate for myself enough. And so I'm learning how to advocate for myself, but still be compassionate to those who I'm setting a boundary with. And so it's interesting to me, like it's always fascinating to me to see how things are interconnected in the interplay of things, and how you can't always have one without the other. It's necessary to encompass all of these different aspects to lend to the whole and be holistic, as one person. Yeah.
Yes, which is, actually why we have been so emphatic about the Empress, and why this is called the Empress journey, because that's really what she embodies, right? The idea that everything is interconnected, and she's able to lean into all of these lean and nurture into all of these different aspects of herself, and have that understanding that you have to have that emotional piece and that logical piece, and you have to have passion, and you have to also just like take care of yourself, like physically, like all of these different things, um that when they come together, and that you have to work throughout your journey, like really set you up holistically as a woman, as a priestess, whomever, you end up showing up, like whomever your authentic self is and whomever you show up as. All of those things come to play through the Empress.
Yes, very true. Um, so we have about 10 minutes left of our episode. Do you have any other insights on the Queen of Swords, or other ways she's helped you along this journey?
Do I have any more insights about the Queen of Swords, or any ways that she's helped me throughout this journey? Um, One thing that came up to me when I was meditating on the Queen of Swords, um, and no, okay, yes, one thing that came up for me was this idea that oh, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let me try one more time. It's this idea that leaning into the intellectual sides of things and just looking like really, being overly book smart and learning like and just wanting to acquire a bunch of information is great, and that's an aspect of the Queen of Swords. But a debilitation of that is actually using all of that big brain intellectual information as a form of escapism,
Mm.
or a form of like almost even leaning to the perfectionism where like I I can't do this thing until I have all of this information, or like I'm not good enough, so I just need to keep acquiring all of this knowledge, all of these like certifications, XYZ. And instead of like doing the thing, your thing is just like acquiring the knowledge, and you're just never like, oh, well, I'm not confident, so I'm going to go read this. Oh, I'm not confident, and so again, with the Queen of Swords, like upright, you have to pull yourself out of that cycle a little bit where it's like it's great to think through things. It's great to have all of this knowledge, but at the end of the day, what are you doing with that knowledge? How do you apply it? And so that is that aspect of the Queen of Swords really has to like you have to push yourself to the application part. She's very smart, she's very strategic, she loves gaining that knowledge, but at the end of the day, it's what do you do? What are you doing with that knowledge? And I think that's in terms of where people are, especially as beginners in their spiritual journeys, is that they feel like they don't know enough, or they feel like they have to do things the right way, or they feel like oh, I'm going to read a book, I need to read a book, I need to like read this article, I need to take all these classes, when especially when it comes to African traditional religion, I always say it's like it's an oral tradition. So one, there's not going to be a lot of stuff that's even written down all the way, and two, like at the end of the day, you learn through that experience, you learn through physically doing something. And so that's kind of where we'll see the balance between where the Queen of Swords has to let go a little bit and be like, okay, like I really have to put this into action now. I just can't hold all these things, and how it shows up as the Empress is, again, like not getting stuck in that analysis paralysis where it's just like there's so many options, there's so much to do things. Like I have to go now. Now I have to like apply that Queen of Wands energy where it's just like, okay, like I'm gonna be confident in what I'm doing, and I'm just gonna do the thing. I have the knowledge. I've been had all the knowledge, and so it's time to go and take things into actions. And I think that's something to consider when thinking about the Queen of Wands, and just even having that mental clarity to be like, okay, um, I'm using. I'm kind of hiding behind my knowledge a little bit. I need to put myself out there for real. And that goes back to that vulnerability piece. I think that some people struggle with. And I was even thinking about this in terms of like not even just spirituality, but how I even came to understand myself as the Queen of Swords was actually through that debilitation where I felt like in order to be enough, in order to be accepted certain spaces, that I really had to lean into like educational and sound like this really smart person and be that person who's looked at as like a diplomat. And so I kind of developed these skills almost like in that inverse, like, okay, like in order to be good enough, in order to be accepted, then I this is the way I need to go. And now and through taking that journey, I've kind of learned more that um it's more about how I show up as authentically. I've learned how to be more authentic to myself while also still utilizing the skills of the Queen of Swords in order to get where I'm trying to go. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes That makes
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it made me
sense.
think about because I did the same thing. Like I thought that I had to be I had to have all this book smart
Mhm,
to be acknowledged and to be like I have to sound smart. I have to, and
mhm,
so like if I could go back and tell my younger self, you do not have to go to this specific college, this specific like you don't have to put so much weight on being at a private school or versus like a state public university or whatever, right? Like I would tell myself like, "Hey, go 2 years to community college. Get those electives out the way. You'll
mhm,
save so much money. You won't have to have all these student loans, right?" And even like just continuing to add on degree after degree or degree for me, right? I don't even use my master's anymore at this point. So it's like certain situations I feel like I could have outside of spirituality just saved myself time, effort, money, energy had I not felt like I had to have this certain level of intellect to be noticed and to feel confident enough. And so when we talk about spirituality as well, I think I really did um my start spirituality in the same manner where it was like I have to have all these holistic type of certifications and I have to have all of this spiritual knowledge. I mean, there's a certain level of knowledge that you do have to have, there's a certain level of experience you have to have, but like the titles don't matter at the end of the day. Like this is between you, God, spirit, your spiritual court, your ancestors, and how are you shaping yourself out to help your community, and what does that look like for you specifically, not what someone else has done or who someone else's specialties are, right? Like it's just for you, and in owning who you are or being authentically you is also recognizing what type of knowledge you actually need, right? So, you made a lot of sense, yeah.
perfect. Is there any final words that you like now? Like what we have like a couple minutes left. Are any final words or thoughts that you have about the Queen of Swords in relation to life, the lessons, the Empress, anything? Any final words or wisdom?
No, actually, I think we've covered it.
We did cover a lot.
Yeah, we did cover a lot, and the time went by pretty fast. So no, I would just, I'm very excited to continue moving forward. And I want everybody to know that we will be back next week. But in the meantime, please, please, please put in the comments how the Queen of Swords shows up for you in readings. What lessons have you yourself learned from the Queen of Swords? What takeaways can you take from the Queen of Swords in helping you along your life's journey? Um, and then we'll see you guys in the chat and talk about things. Um, let's see. Let me talk about a little bit about what's going on with Vision of Dawn Tour.
Mhm.
Today is the last day to sign up for Mambo Soleil's Prosperity Ritual Rich Spirit. I really look forward to seeing you guys in there. It's an amazing, powerful, and effective ritual that calls in a lot of things. It's always been, every time I've participated, I've always gained new insights about my financial blockages, about my blockages that I wouldn't even think had to do with my finances and my prosperity per se. But um, it all made sense. I've called in a lot of new things using this ritual. So if you haven't signed up already, please do. It will be extremely um, instrumental for you coming into the new year.
Yes, and I
Um,
just
Go
real
ahead.
quick, I want to add, please don't get stuck in feeling like you have to be a certain level to participate in rituals or anything. Like this is very beginner friendly. We'll offer people, Mambo Soleil or other members of Vision of Dawn Tour will offer you support throughout the way. So please, 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 this is an amazing ritual, like she said. Okay, go ahead.
And it's not like something that has a lot of time constraints around it, right? It's something that works within your schedule, that's flexible.
Mhm.
If you need accommodations, you can talk to Mamba Soleil about that, and she can, you know, really support you. This is something that she also offers as a one-on-one service. So if that's something that you would rather do it one-on-one versus in a group setting, you can go ahead and book that with her. I'll reach out to her. Our link trees will be in the description of this video, but also the WhatsApp group for Rich Spirit will be in there, so you guys can join that link. Um, I have a ritual coming up in January. It's January 18th. It's during the waning moon cycle, which is really good for release. And that's what Phoenix Awakening is all about. It's, you know, the Phoenix. I love the Phoenix. I've always loved the Phoenix because of it lend into that resiliency piece that I talked about before. But
Mhm.
you know, it's really about just releasing the burning of the past and moving forward into new. So it's a great ritual to do at the start of the new year, letting go of everything from this year. 2024 has been a lot. There's been a lot that has been uncovered. There's been a lot that secrets have come out the woodwork, a lot of ending of friendships, of relationships, of just gunk. And
Mhm.
so Phoenix Awakening is a great way to really solidify all of that period of release and letting go and help you with finally being able to move forward detached from the past so that we can make 2025 a great year for us. My bad, I choked. But also, is there anything else that we have going on?
No, be on the lookout for additional offerings from Vision of Dawn Tour. I am so excited. I'm wrapping up my final week of the Dream Alchemy Workshop, and I have loved working with these ladies, and we've learned a lot of awesome things. And so, in the meantime, before I start my offerings for next year, I will be offering a service within the next couple of weeks. It'll be live where it is a dream interpretation service, but it is dream mapping. And so I'm going to be offering you more of like a detailed analysis of your dreams in terms of the major themes, any astrological factors that may be impacting your dreams, any additional messages from spirit about your dreams, any major symbolism. And so it's almost like a report that you'll get. Well, yeah, it is essentially like a report that you'll get about your dream. So it'll be like, this is what this means, but also why, and other things for you to explore and look into for yourself when it comes to your dream. And so I'm so excited. Again, that'll be um, with by the end of this month. So look out for that service as well.
And I loved it. I booked Hunsi Lovana to interpret a dream for me, and it was so detailed, and it really helped me fully understand why I was dreaming what I was dreaming. Um, it just it's a really great service. And I love that you've created that. I look forward to seeing how it grows and expands for you. You're an amazing dream interpreter. Um, which reminds me, on Monday, December 9th, that starts the holiday sale for my website. If you want any energy healing, Reiki. If you want to learn how to do Usui Reiki and become a level 1 or 2 practitioner, if you are already a level 1 and 2 practitioner, I can also attune you for master teacher level. Um, and my Reiki teaching, if you add the code Learn Reiki 2024, in total, it is down to 50%. It is 50% off. So that's what I meant to say. In terms of Reiki services, I have chakra balancing or chakra healing. I have a chakra consultation where we can talk about what type of Reiki service you may need. I have a rose limpia, which is just cleansing with rose energy. Y'all know I love the rose. I love roses. And so cleansing with the energy of the rose is one for a aura cleanse or just to refresh, replenish, and renew you. And then if you need, speaking of letting go of the past, if you have any um, cords or soul ties, things of that sort, I also help energetically remove cords. Um, Other than that, like Lavana said, keep a lookout on what Vision of Dawn Tour as a whole has to offer. Our godmother, Mambo Soleil, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.
Bye.